In the shadowy depths of the Mississippi Delta, where the land whispers of long-forgotten sins, there lies a town shrouded in darkness. This is Yazoo City, a place with a secret buried beneath the twisted roots of Glenwood Cemetery. The ground here holds more than bones. It cradles a curse laid down by a witch whose power still lingers. Her vengeance seeps through the generations, leaving behind strange omens, eerie coincidences, and a mystery that refuses to be solved. Welcome back to the Southern Blueprint Podcast. I'm Matt Swift. Today, we journey to Mississippi, where the land breathes with stories of the past, and the humid air carries whispers of a dark, buried secret. Down here in the South, stories aren't just something you tell. They're something you pass down. From generation to generation, they live and breathe, and they're whispered between family members around the dinner table. They're shared on porches late into the evening and told by campfires with the flicker of flames dancing in the night. But let's be real. Most of these stories are told when folks are absolutely wasted. But those end up being the best stories. Folklore is our way of preserving the past. Our history, our culture, and yes, even our fears. Scary stories in particular hold a special place in Southern tradition. In the South, there's a saying, the deeper the roots, the darker the stories. Honestly, I'm not sure if that's a real saying, but it sounds good, so we'll just go with that. But down here in the South, there's tons of tales of witches, haunted houses, and cursed cemeteries. They have a way of taking hold and embedding themselves in the land. They grow over time, becoming more elaborate, more sinister as they're passed down from one generation to the next. What makes Southern folklore truly unique is its blend of this like history and superstition and mystery. It's not just about what happened. It's about what we believe could happen. The line between fact and fiction is often blurred, making these stories all the more intriguing. Our story today takes us back to the late 19th century, a time when Yazoo City was a bustling southern town. Not far from the banks of the Yazoo River, there was an old woman who supposedly lived in a rundown shack hidden among the dense woods. Her name, lost to history, but her name was never important, for she was known by another name, the Witch of Yazoo. She was said to be a woman of frightful appearance, with wild hair, eyes that could freeze a man's soul, and a cackle that echoed through the night like a death knell. The townsfolk whispered about her dark practices, how she lured fishermen from the river with her charms and spells, only to kill them in some gruesome rituals. Was she truly a witch, or simply a recluse driven mad by isolation? That really didn't matter to the townspeople. To them, she was the embodiment of evil. There are a few variations to the story, and I've heard quite a bit and I've read quite a bit. One of these tales is on a fateful day, a group of local children, perhaps on a dare or simply spurred by morbid curiosity, they ventured a little too close to the witch's domain, and they found themselves witness to a horrific sight. They saw bodies, or what was left of them, strewn around the old woman's shack. Terrified, they ran back to town, their screams echoing across the river. The town sheriff, a man named Scott Haley, he gathered up a posse to go confront the witch. When they arrived at her shack, they found the old woman hunched over, muttering something unholy in some unholy tongue. In this version, she didn't resist, but they dragged her to the town square where a rough sort of justice was administered. They didn't wait for a trial. They didn't bother with formalities of the law. The quote-unquote witch was taken to Glenwood Cemetery, where a makeshift grave was dug, and they planned to hang her. But before they could bury her, she spat out a curse, her voice filled with venom, and she said, "I will return to destroy this town. In 20 years, I shall come back and burn Yazoo City to the ground." Now, there's another version where the sheriff is said to have went to her shack, and he ends up chasing this witch, through the swamps, where she was half drowned in quicksand by the time the sheriff and his posse caught up to her. And as she was sinking, she swore revenge on Yazoo City and on the townspeople. Like I said, there's multiple variations of this, like how, this all came about, all types of legends and things like that. But regardless of which story you have heard, the threat to destroy the city remains the same. That's one thing that is just constant. And again, it kind of going back to folklore and tales, there's always, different variations of stories, but there's usually some like one truth to every story, which I find absolutely fascinating. But before we get any more into the story, as you know, this is the what is this, the third episode? Yeah. In every episode, I like to take time and have a beverage, so I am thirsty. But for this episode, I'm going to have New Belgium's Voodoo Ranger, the Atomic Pumpkin. New Belgium is out of Asheville, North Carolina, and I wanted to show them some love this episode in light of all the damage from Hurricane Helene. It's just so unbelievably sad what has happened up in the high country. I used to live in Asheville for a few years. I worked at the Mass General store there in the outdoor department. Lived there for years. Also lived in Boone, North Carolina. And it's just so heartbreaking what has happened. But I know they will rebuild, and when I can, I will head back up and see some pals of mine. I've been checking in on them, but I'm certainly thinking of all of them right now. But I want to show show them some love. So it's pumpkin beer season. But I have to say, this Atomic Pumpkin is very good. Usually, I start drinking pumpkin beer like late August, early September, and usually by October, I'm kind of fed up with pumpkin beer. Maybe I just drink too much of it. But this, I've got to say, this Atomic Pumpkin, it's their spicy release. It is very, very good. It's 6.4% alcohol. It doesn't have like a lot of like pumpkin-y taste to it, just enough. But it's also, and I have to say this, and usually what happens when I drink pumpkin beer, I can only drink one. and sometimes not even a whole one. But with this, I could drink multiple of these. It's very, very good. So yeah, New Belgium. If you get a chance, go out and get them. You know what I should have had for this episode though? Do you guys remember drinking witch doctors? Was that a thing? Did you guys have that when you were little? Do you remember these at all? You would go up to a drink machine, or you would ask the vendor to basically give you, it's soda, and basically ask them to give you every type of drink that's on tap there. It kind of sounds disgusting, but depending on what the options were, it was pretty good. And there's, of course, like with our story today, there's different variations of this. Sometimes there's a variation that's kind of strange, but it's like Coke, Dr. Pepper, Sprite, Sundrop, Cheerwine, and has pickles on top. It sounds absurd, but let me tell you, it's actually really delicious, and I kind of want one, and I should have made one for this. And of course, I probably, wherever you're from, the drink choices may differ. I mean, you're probably, depending where you live, you're like, what the hell is Cheerwine and what is Sundrop? But it's pretty good. But like nowadays, you really can't. I don't think you could really do it, because nowadays you go in, there's stupid, diet drinks and sugar-free drinks. You got Coke Zero. I mean, you can't have like a diet witch doctor or a witch doctor zero. That just sounds stupid. But let me know if when you listen to this episode, let me know if when you were growing up, did you have witch doctors? Was that even a thing? I'm not sure. But anyway, back to the pumpkin beer. Yeah. New Belgium, go get it. It's delicious. And then after this episode, I think I'm going to try to do a witch doctor. But let's go back to the show. So, ding dong, the witch is dead. She was buried in Glenwood Cemetery, and life in Yazoo City went on. The townsfolk thought little of the curse as the years passed by. They were more concerned with struggles of everyday life, crops, business, the occasional scuffle that broke out in the streets. But something strange happened after the witch was buried. The earth above her grave wouldn't stay put. It bulged, it shifted, it cracked as if something or someone was trying to claw its way out. The townsfolk took to placing heavy chains around the grave, hoping to keep whatever evil lurked underneath the soil from escaping. But the chains were always found broken and the ground disturbed. But still, life in Yazoo City carried on. The curse became a local ghost story, told around campfires to scare the little ones. And for 20 years, nothing happened. The witch's words seemed to be nothing more than the rantings of a madwoman. Until May 25th, 1904. A fire broke out in the town. It began in the heart of the town. And again, there's some variations of exactly where this broke out. Supposedly there was a bride-to-be was dressing, knocked over a candle that started the fire. There's different variations of this too, but the main point, a fire broke out, and the flames went out of control. It was feeding on all the wooden structures. It kept jumping from like house to house, business to business, and it spread with like terrifying speed, like it had a mind of its own. And it left nothing in its wake. Despite the efforts of the townspeople, the blaze consumed over 200 homes, churches, and businesses. It was a disaster like anything Yazoo City had ever seen. And by the time the flames finally died down, much of the town laid in ruins. So here's where things get interesting. The fire broke out precisely 20 years to the day after the witch's death. For those who remembered the curse, there was no doubt in their minds who was responsible. The witch had returned, just as she had promised, to exact her revenge on the town that had wronged her. After the fire, Yazoo City was rebuilt, but it was never quite the same. The memory of that day lingered like smoke in the air, and the story of the Witch of Yazoo became more than just a local legend. It became a warning. Over the years, there have been countless reports of other strange occurrences. Those brave enough or perhaps foolish enough to visit the witch's grave often speak of a unsettling feeling, as if they're being watched by unseen eyes. And there's all these other little things that happen in the town that, can't be explained. And of course, people want to attribute that to the witch. Visitors of Glenwood Cemetery can still find the witch's grave today, marked by heavy chains and a weathered headstone. The ground around it remains disturbed, as if the earth itself refuses to forget the curse that was spoken there. Some say that on certain nights when the moon is high and the wind whispers through the trees, you could still hear the witch's cackle echoing from the graveyard. Now, no tale about the Witch of Yazoo could be complete without mentioning the work of one of Yazoo City's most famous people, and that is Willie Morris. Willie grew up in Yazoo City, and his connection to the town stories and legends run deep. His book, Good Old Boy, first published in 1971, is a semi-autobiographical collection of stories about his childhood in Mississippi. It's filled with charm and nostalgia of growing up in the South during simpler times, but it's more than just a memoir. It's also a snapshot of Southern life and tall tales that come with it. Good Old Boy is filmed with mischief and adventures of Willie and his friends and everything like that. But it's his sequel, Good Old Boy and the Witch of Yazoo, is where he delves into one of Yazoo's most famous legends, the Witch of Yazoo. In this book, Morris spins a tale for younger readers, blending his boyhood adventure with eerie legends of this witch, giving us a more personal and imaginative view of the story. Willie captures the witch's curse in a way that reflects how these Southern legends get passed down from generation to generation, evolving with each telling. His take on the Witch of Yazoo not only keeps the story alive in modern readers, but also cements it as a part of Yazoo City's cultural identity. Through his words, we get a glimpse of how deeply these legends seep into the fabric of a place, becoming a part of the people who live there. Willie's portrayal of the witch is playful, yet haunting. It's kind of a perfect example of how Southern folklore can be both entertaining and eerie, blurring the lines between childhood imagination and like a real dark history. Whether you grew up hearing the tale or you're hearing it for the first time today, Morris's books offer kind of like this gateway into the heart of Yazoo City's most enduring mystery. And a fun fact is that Willie Morris is buried 50 feet away from the Witch of Yazoo in Glenwood Cemetery, which I think is pretty fantastic. As with all legends, there is always this question of how much of it is true. Was there really a witch? Did she actually curse the town? Some historians suggest that the story of the Witch of Yazoo might have been born out of a combination of superstition and historic events. The Great Fire of 1904 was undoubtedly real. It's a real thing that happened. Maybe the timing of the quote unquote curse could be pure coincidence, or it could be, something more. The witch could have been an ordinary woman. Maybe she was misunderstood and ostracized and maybe just a recluse. Maybe she was just batshit crazy and a killer who actually would lure people out there. Maybe she was into voodoo or hoodoo. Like I said, there's all types of tales around this, and supposedly she would bury bodies up in the hills on the riverbanks and stuff like that. But yeah, who knows? But I guess regardless of the truth, the legend has taken on a life of its own. It's woven into the very fabric of Yazoo City's identity. It's a story that continues to captivate, terrify, and intrigue both locals and visitors alike. I read something interesting that a group was wanting to find out who lies below the Witch of Yazoo's grave, and has actually requested to excavate the site. The local historic society's spokesperson, Sue Patterson, said a graduate student from the University of Southern Mississippi wanted to know who is exactly buried in the witch's grave. The student is a bioarchaeologist. I didn't know that was a thing, but apparently that's what they are. And their group had asked Patterson if they could, excavate the grave. Patterson said the group would pay for the project. They would just need help using a ground survey radar system to find out what's underground. After speaking with the local groups in the city, Patterson said the request was denied, just kind of out of respect for the grave site. And then I also read an article too where there's a theory that there's actually a man who was a member of the Odd Fellows fraternity is actually buried in that grave. And the chain links surrounding the grave may be associated with the fraternity. All this is very fascinating. Stuff like this I find so interesting. I would very much like to know who's actually buried in that grave. That's kind of like the archaeologist treasure hunter in me, and just kind of wanting to know the truth. But there's this other side it's very amusing to not know. I like that mystery. And again, kind of lends to like, if you don't know, you can kind of just like make it up or kind of like think whatever you want to about it. So I think it would be cool to really know who's buried there. From my understanding, there was an old gravestone on the site, and it literally it didn't have a name or anything like that. It just said TW. And some people say that's for the witch, or it could have been a woman with those initials. The thing with the fire, all of the town's records were destroyed. So who knows? Since then, I think there's now a new headstone on that gravesite, and it's just kind of like more of like a tribute, if of anything else. So if you're listening and if you've actually visited the gravesite, let me know. Tell me what you think. But yeah, it's all super fascinating, and just adds another layer to this whole thing. Also, I need to mention, before I forget, that I have helped back a Kickstarter for something called Mississippi Macabre, which is a horror anthology featuring tales of folklore and legends from the American South. It was like right up my alley. So I jumped right on this when I saw it. I found these guys on social media. You can follow them on Instagram at Mississippi Macabre. But let me tell you kind of like what this is. And it fits perfectly with this episode. It's going to be like a 40+ page comic book featuring 4 tales of terror from across the Magnolia State, all told by Southern artists who live and breathe Southern Gothic horror. Of course, one of these stories is about the Witch of Yazoo. I'm excited for this to come out. They have already met their Kickstarter goal. Now I think they're working on some of their stretch goals. They have a lot of great writers and artists working on this. They have Stephen Butler, who has worked on Spider-Man and Punisher and Silver Sable and Sonic the Hedgehog and Archie. They have John Jennings writing. He's a Hugo Award winner and New York Times bestselling author. They have Brian LeBlanc, who has painted the Witch of Yazoo cover for the Mississippi Macabre. So you should go check them out. Like I said, you can follow them on Instagram, check out their Kickstarter. I think they're going to be doing a launch event, I believe, unless this has changed, like October 19th-ish, which is coming up. Maybe by the time you hear this episode, it's already that time. But go check them out. It's a really cool thing. Like I said, it fits perfectly with this episode. And I'm a big comic book nerd, big Halloween nerd, big folklore nerd. So it checks all the boxes for me. But yeah, go check them out. So I got to know, where do you land on this? Do you think the legend is true? Do you think there really was a witch and believe she was the cause of the Great Fire? Or was it simply a kid playing with matches? And maybe just a lady that lived on the banks of the Yazoo River who was just a weirdo and misunderstood? Did she maybe actually kill a few people, got caught, was tried and put to death and buried exactly where the grave indicates? I would love to know what your thoughts are. I think there's probably a little grain of truth somewhere in that. I guess if I had to guess, I think it's more of a combination of there probably was a lady. She was probably weird. Maybe she was in the, like I said, voodoo, stuff like that. Lived out in the middle of nowhere. Maybe caused some problems. People didn't like her. Maybe she did do something, and I think she probably is buried where where the grave indicates, and the fire I think is probably coincidence. But who knows? Yeah, I'd like to get everybody's thoughts. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. This is kind of a shorter episode, but I do appreciate everybody's support doing this. It's Halloween season. I think I'm going to try to do 2 more episodes kind of like this. I love Halloween. I love folklore. I love, scary stories and things like that. So try to do a couple more, but yeah, thank you guys so much for following me, tuning in. If you can, please leave me a review, any comments, anything like that. And also, be sure to check out my website, thesouthernblueprint.com. I have all types of articles online about the Mothman, the Lizard Man of South Carolina, which I might actually do an episode about. But I got all types of fun stuff. I'm gonna be doing that throughout October, and then after that, I'll get into some more, I guess, quote unquote, normal episodes. I'm gonna talk about like Blackbeard and other things like that coming up. But again, thank you guys so much for commenting, sending me notes, and of course subscribing to the channel. But guys, I will talk to you later.